All right, we'll go ahead and begin. 10:15. If you're not here now, you are late. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Eric Kristen. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction. And on behalf of the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, Associated Builders and Contractors of San Diego, Associated General Contractors of San Diego, the Western Electrical Contractors Association, the San Diego County Apartment Association, the San Diego Association of Realtors, Concerned Parents, the Lincoln Club, and the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, thank you for joining us today. I would like to point out that those of the staff here at SDUSD that didn't go to Hawaii are currently taking time out of their busy day to join us here today as well, so I want to acknowledge them here in the background. We're here today to talk about one issue on a larger level, that being Prop J, the effort by a school board that clearly has no concept of how to take care of taxpayers' dollars, asking for more money from taxpayer dollars, when in fact they've demonstrated a complete disregard for how those tax dollars are spent. Specifically speaking for the Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction, we are releasing the first in a series of surveys and studies that demonstrate exactly at a specific level how that's being accomplished by the school board. And on our issue, the Project Stabilization Agreement issue, the numbers are striking, and sadly they were predictable. We warned the school district board that before they rewarded special interest big labor supporters that got a number of them elected with hundreds of thousands of dollars in contributions, that if they pursued a project stabilization agreement on the propositionist construction bond, a $2 billion bond approved by taxpayers in November of 2008, that this is exactly what would happen when it came to reduce bidders, increase costs, and really taxpayer dollars being wasted. So on behalf of CFEC, I'm going to speak specifically to that survey, and then we're going to have a number of speakers speak on the Prop J issue at large and how this really fits into the narrative that this is a board that is simply out of control and not worthy of another dime of taxpayer dollars. Sadly, a district that might or might not be in need of it simply can't be trusted with this board. That's not to say at a later time, when there are actually board members that take their fiduciary responsibilities seriously, are elected, that in fact going before the taxpayers might be a good idea, and they might be rewarded with an approval on a November election, but I don't think that's going to happen this time. The packet that's been handed out, titled A Record of Failure, whenever you have a project labor agreement or project stabilization agreement, you can always title any survey after the fact a record of failure, because project labor agreements, by the implicit and explicit discrimination contained there within, are really an invitation to failure. What this has done at San Diego Unified is quite striking, actually. What I will do is simply highlight some of the most egregious examples that we have found in our study, and then turn it over to the speakers and have questions at the end. For those of you that have had the packet, and by the way, this is available both electronically as well as in the packet form, hard copy form. The district in 2009, the newly constituted San Diego Unified School District Board, decided to put the interest of students, of taxpayers, and really their chief concern behind them, and take up the interest of special labor, big labor special interests, by taking up the issue of project stabilization agreements as one of the first acts. And at that meeting in January of 2009, for those of us that were there, they voted 3-2 to begin a quote-unquote negotiation with local big labor representatives. A few months later, they had their agreement, quote-unquote agreement, negotiated, again, quote-unquote, between the district and labor, and it was a PSA like PSAs we've seen all over the state. It excluded non-union apprentices explicitly, and it implicitly made it difficult for non-union contractors and workers to work on the project for a variety of reasons. As we predicted, despite the promises of PSA proponents that this would not affect bids, that it would in fact bring projects in on time and on budget, it has done none of those things. And the first two items that we're looking at in our survey, because projects of course aren't complete as of yet, is we've looked at how this impacted the number of bidders and what those bid results were compared to the engineer's estimates. A summary of those findings is as follows. The results of Prop S projects to date, non-PSA, meaning non-project stabilization agreement, had the average number of bidders at 15 on non-PSA projects. bidders for the 15 non-PSA projects was 10.1 bidders per project. 11 of the 15 non-PSA projects came in under the low engineer's estimate. The low engineer's estimate for the 15 non-PSA projects totaled $62,725,000, while the low bid totals came to $50,133,937, or 20% lower than the low engineer's estimate. When you have competition, and when you have an economy such as it is today, these are the type of numbers you will see across the county, across the state, on these types of projects. Anywhere from 10 to 15 bidders on these types of projects. So of 150, there were 152 total bidders. When it came to the PSA projects, which began being awarded in February of 2010, what you had was something that was dramatically different. First project, of course, that went out was one for the record books, and it was so embarrassing for the district that the board actually had to rebid it. Not that it did any good, except it did give staff an opportunity to change the engineer's estimate from 2.5 to 3.5 million window of what it would estimate that it would cost to a $1 million to $5 million window. When you can't get a PSA to meet the promised needs and to meet the promises made by big labor special interests, what you do is you simply change the budget. Nevertheless, it came back at it came back still massively over budget, not 66% over budget like it was the first time. It simply came back 47% over budget the second time. On average, the number of bidders for the 13 PSA projects that we studied was 5.4. 5.4 from 10.1. 2 of the 13 PSA projects came in under the low engineer's estimate, 2. So you went from having 11 of the 15 non-PSA projects coming in under the low engineer's estimate to 2 of similar PSA projects. The low engineer's estimate for the 13 PSA projects totaled $33,042,500, while the low bid totals came to $43,580,362, or 32% more than the low engineer's estimate. Dramatic change from what we saw with non-PSA projects. What's most fascinating about this study is that there were 2 projects over the $1 million threshold that the PSA kicks in at that were actually bid without the PSA, but were bid at the same time that the PSA projects were going out. These projects had 12 bidders and 13 bidders respectively. So you had almost more than doubling of the bidders that were on the non-PSA projects versus what was happening with the PSA projects. From 5.4 to 12 and 13 bidders. This is what we predicted. The conclusion is simple. This was predictable. You were going to have a reduction of bidders, which it will be interesting to see the spin to demonstrate that somehow there weren't a reduction in bidders. Sometimes facts can get in the way of preconceived notions, sometimes they don't. However, there's been a dramatic reduction. In fact, it's been 47% fewer bidders on non-PSA projects versus PSA projects. Non-PSA project came in 20% under the low engineer's estimates. PSA projects came in 32% over. If the non-PSA bid results, what happened with the non-PSA projects carried over to the PSA projects, taxpayers could have saved over $11.1 million versus what they are currently being forced to pay out because of reduced bidders and increased costs. Now again, I look forward to the explaining away of these disastrous numbers, but the reality is the voters know what is going on in this district, where the fiduciary responsibility that this board has is not to the taxpayers, it is to big labor special interests. And they are going to realize that on November 2nd, just how much of a disconnect there is. And our goal here is not to just defeat Prop J. Our goal here is to make sure that it is such a bad, lopsided victory that this district will finally stand up, look in the mirror, and determine where its priorities lie. Clearly, the majority of the board members don't understand that, but perhaps the voters can remind them in the next board election. So with that, I'd like to introduce Derek Smith. He's a third-year electrical apprentice from Associated Builders and Contractors of San Diego. Derek is explicitly forbidden from working on any project paid with his tax dollars here at San Diego Unified because of the language contained there within the PSA. It explicitly forbids non-union apprenticeship programs. So Derek's going to speak to that and why he would encourage taxpayers on November 2nd to reject Prop J.
How's it going? Name's Derek Smith. I'm a third-year apprentice, fifth period. Due to these recent PLAs that have been put in place, haven't been able to get work. I'm paying taxes just the same as everybody else. Trying to get work out there, and it's become difficult. So I don't know. I just feel that we should all look at what's being written down and read everything that we're signing. So I don't know. Maybe they'll change their minds. Hopefully that's what occurs here. Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. Derek, again, being trained in a state-approved, federally approved training program and is simply forbidden from working on projects at San Diego Unified School District because of the PSA. We understand, however, that the PSA is just one small element as to why there is such broad dissatisfaction with this district. We understand that. We appreciate that. It is major to us as builders, people who want to build and give the taxpayers the best deal at the best price. But there is a broad swath of opposition to what it is the district's asking for a variety of reasons. And we want to hear from those stakeholders in the community as well and let you know why we think there is going to be such a resounding message sent on November 2nd.